Well, good morning. Oh yeah, y'all sound good. Man, I got teary just listening to the beautiful chorus of voices that just filled the room. Man, thank you for singing and singing well, right? So which means thank you for not stinking in your singing. I appreciate that. My name's Jason Rumbo. I'm one of the pastors here at Hope, and we are just delighted that you are with us this morning. I know we have many guests in the room, and just hear me, I know what it's like to be somewhere new for the first time. It's kind of like that terrifying moment when you've got your tray and you're in the middle school cafeteria, and you're trying to figure out where you're going to sit. And you don't want to sit with the bullies, but you don't want to sit with the nerds either, you know? So you're like trying to figure out where you're going to be. Like you're in a safe space, all right? We love you, and our hope and our prayer for you this morning is that you find family here, that you find friends here, and that you find life here. I was thinking about, Lila Beth was talking about one of her early Easter memories. I was thinking about one of mine when I was a kid. And I am a child of the 80s and 90s. And I grew up with the amazing, I would just call it highly acclaimed, incredibly intricately thought through Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay, anybody else with me? You guys like TMNT? Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, good. And all I wanted as a kid was a Donatello Ninja Turtle action figure, right? He had like the bow staff, the purple mouth. I mean, the dude was amazing. And I thought, that's all I want. And I grew up in a house that, like, we did the Easter bunny, so we always waited for Easter bunny to show up on Easter morning. And I put my basket out, and I just waited. And I woke up the next morning, and it was overflowing with candy and all the stuff. And I ran over and I'm like ripping stuff out because I've got my mind on one thing. It's a action figure, Donatello, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, ready to go, full bull stat, like I'm ready to go, man. And so I'm ripping through the Cadbury eggs and getting rid of the Peeps because who really likes those anyway, right? And all that kind of fake grass, right? Getting to what I saw was the line, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I thought, this is it. And I pull it out. And I look at it, and it says, Donatello, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, chocolate. To say I was disappointed. It wasn't even solid chocolate. It was like that hollow chocolate mess. Like, I don't even know, man. Like, I was really just disappointed. You ever have those moments? Right? Like, you walk into a situation, and you're like, this is going to be the best thing ever. And you're like, somebody didn't get the memo. This was the worst thing ever. Or man, just extreme disappointment. You get excited and all it is a hollow chocolate Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. This morning, I had this whole intro planned. I had practiced it. I was ready to go. And then I was actually confronted this morning with a version of reality that many of us don't get a chance to participate in. I came in early, as I always do on a Sunday morning, and I was just getting stuff set up, and I walked out these doors to the lobby, and sitting in the front of our lawn was a man. I don't know how long he'd been there. He told me he'd slept on the steps the whole night, but this man literally had no clothes on. He had no pants. He had told me later on that he had experienced liver failure and couldn't keep his insides in, if you know what I'm saying. I'm standing there talking to this man, and he's covered in mess. I asked him his name, and he told me, and I said, "What? Why don't you come inside? Like, come in, we'll get you cleaned up, we'll get you a warm place to sit." And he said, I can't. And I said, "Why?" He said, "I don't want to mess up your church." Yet somebody else who's been disappointed. And my heart broke. Because I thought, what kind of church would keep out the broken? What kind of church would say, "I'm sorry, you're too messy"? And I think that a lot of us, honestly, have had that kind of experience growing up. If we're honest, we come and we're broken and we're messy and we're like, this should be the one place where we can be who we really are, and yet what we find is almost like a do not welcome sign hanging on the door. You're not allowed in. You can't come in. You're not one of us. And so we walk around carrying these unmet expectations, carrying these burdens, this brokenness that absolutely wrecks us. And we're afraid of actually being honest about it, because if we're honest about it, then we're just going to experience heartache and rejection again. So we just keep it bottled up. I kind of think about the early disciples. As Micah mentioned, we had a Good Friday service this past Friday, and we ended the service, and what one of my kids said was an incredibly dark moment. Jesus dies, and they stick him in a grave. It wasn't even his own. They stick him in a grave, and they're like, I don't really know what's going to happen next. I mean, just think about it. They were in the midst of an era of corrupt politicians, religious factions, oppressive governments. And for 3 years, they're thinking, this is the guy. I mean, he's thinking bringing people back to life, casting out demons, open up a can of whoop trash on the government. Like this is the guy, right? And he's dead. Man, we expected so much more. And it wasn't just an accidental death. It wasn't like, oops, right? He was arrested, put on this sham of a trial. It was a brutal murder in public as a criminal. And then what? They have to wait for what? I mean, if we're honest, and let's just be honest here, okay? Like, let's pull back the covers and just be honest. Many of us are living between disappointment and heartache. I know I am. The days are gone of when I grew up in the 80s and 90s. We used to have this thing called TGIF. You guys remember Family Matters? Right? Y'all remember Urkel? Right? And at the end of the episode, 30 minutes, everybody's happy. Like the biggest crisis was that Urkel couldn't get Laura Winslow to actually go out with him. Right? That was the biggest deal, but it's okay because it all ended in happy, just shiny emotions. But that's not reality. Right? It's just so much harder. And the reality is that the people we've put our hope in, the systems that we've looked toward for a healing have failed. And I think the issue is because the issue isn't out there. It's in here. Here's the point. We live in a moment that's seeing this incredibly awesome cultural shift. I mean, hello, Elon Musk, right? Like sending people into outer space, looking at Mars as the next great place to go. And yet we feel more and more restless. We are psychologically and spiritually regressing and not progressing. And so we kind of live in this weird tension between having everything that we've ever wanted, and yet we're miserable. The further confusion and heartache that many of us grew up with in a church culture that talked a lot about what you were saved from, but not what you were saved for. Right? The Apostle Paul, he wrestled with a lot of these things. He had a lot of disappointment too. He had this tension between them with this religious system he grew up in that was absolutely broken, but had a lot of hope, right? A lot of promise. But yet it provided confusion at best and many times condemnation at worst. But then he kind of does this weird little thing in Romans chapter 8 where he hones in on this beautiful little hiccup in the story. This is Romans chapter 8, starting in verse 18. It'll be on the screen behind me. Paul says it this way: I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory about to be revealed to us. But the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to decay and will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, while we wait for the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes in what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Here's what's happening. Paul was what they call a rabbi. He was a religious teacher. And in Paul's day, in the first century, rabbis and spiritual leaders had kind of this idea of what's happening in history, and they would divide it into two sections. You had what they called this present age. And it was the entire story from Genesis 3 up until their current moment, right? The fall in the garden. And this idea was marked by three types of evil. The first is this human evil: oppression, injustice, racism, sexism, abuse. There was a natural evil. Think of like hurricanes and earthquakes, tornadoes, natural disasters. And then there was this spiritual evil. It was behind so much of the evil that they believed was in the world was a personified evil. It was unseen. You couldn't see it with your eyes, but it was just as real. And that was kind of what marked this present age. But a lot of teachers thought, no. There's one day going to be a future age. They call it the age to come. And it was a time in the future marked by the exact opposite. It was a time when humanity and creation would reach its climax under the rule and the reign of God. It's what Jesus called the kingdom of God. And the moment in history where it went from this present age to the age to come was marked by something called Yom Yahweh, the day of the Lord, otherwise known as Judgment Day. Now, I don't know about you, but as a 21st century Western Christian, Judgment Day is terrifying. Right? I grew up in this household where it was like, man, God's watching. You better be careful. And so it led to me to have this sort of fear-based religious attitude where every time the preacher or somebody else like said, hey, pray this prayer after me for forgiveness, I'm like, I'm in, like, let me go, right? Let me do it. Whenever there was a lot of talk about walking the aisle, I walked the aisle like regularly. Like I made a path from my pew down front. Like it was so bad. It was so bad that I went to a youth conference one time. And the speaker, moving speech, he said, hey, if you want to come and be a Christian, and I was like, I don't know that the last 90 times took. I'm just going to be sure again, right? And I started to walk down the aisle, and my youth pastor grabbed me on the shoulder. He said, Rumbo, not this time. Okay? That's how I grew up. Terrified that I didn't mean it the last time. Or what if I said the words wrong? Or what if I meant it, but I know like what I did, like I know like what I said, I know what I thought, I know what I looked at, like I knew, that's not what should happen. What do I do? And so Judgment Day was a very terrifying thing. And I don't want to show up hands, but I'm willing to bet many, if not most of you in this room have had some sort of religious guilt and fear driving your, quote, relationship with God. Let me tell you something. That's not the story the New Testament paints. Here's what's beautiful about it. Ready? On this day of the Lord, right? This sort of Yom Yahweh, day of judgment, what we find happen is actually this. Think about you living in a first century culture where you've got nothing but oppression, right? Nothing but just absolute terror on every side. What you don't want is for that to continue. And so the day of the Lord in the first century concept was a day when God was going to step in and justice was going to finally happen. Not for you, but for the people who've oppressing you. It was a day when you've experienced systemic poverty and you just can't quite kick that habit. And God shows up and says, hey, you're free. You don't have to stay in this any longer. The day of the Lord, Judgment Day for the first century Jew, was not a day of fear. It was a day of celebration. It was a day of freedom. Why? Because if you're poor and oppressed, if you're a victim of injustice, you want the judgment of God. You want freedom from oppression. You want God to step into human history and eradicate and wipe out the oppressors and the evil and to usher in a new reality of peace and equality and justice. You long for that. And what we find Paul saying here in Romans 8 is this: the resurrection of Jesus messes up our jacked up theology of fear because of Judgment Day. And here's how he does it. He says that right in the middle of history, right when we thought things were going to be done, there was a twist in the plot. J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote the Lord of the Rings series. Any Lord of the Rings people in here? Like, thank you. All right, the rest of you need to repent and go read it, okay? It's amazing. He coined this amazing term called a Eucatastrophe. Turn to your neighbor and say, Eucatastrophe. Not like you are a catastrophe, like don't do that, right? Like Eucatastrophe. So here's what Eucatastrophe is. We all know what the word catastrophe means, right? It's disaster. But the two words in front of it, EU, is actually a Greek word that means good. This is a good catastrophe. And here's how Tolkien defined Eucatastrophe. It was a sudden, happy turn in a story that pierces you with a joy that brings tears. He wrote the book, The Lord of the Rings, but there was a movie. Maybe you saw that one, okay? And there's a scene where this guy named Gandalf, who's this incredible wizard who was helping them kind of get the ring out of wherever they were and take it to go have it destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom. And there's this one scene where this incredibly demonic-looking creature comes in and he's trying to stop them. And Gandalf sacrifices his life so that the rest could get away. And you're like, man, what a waste. Gandalf's he was the one guy that we all liked, and he's dead. And the rest of the movie keeps going, and the movie ends. And then in the second movie, at the darkest of moments, when you thought all hope was lost, guess who shows up? Gandalf. That's the Eucatastrophe. And J.R.R. Tolkien, he says that the greatest Eucatastrophe in human history is Easter. We went into Friday thinking, well, that was a letdown. Maybe this morning you came into church thinking, it's going to be like every other time when I walk in. Just more letdown, more disappointment. And what Tolkien says is, no. Sunday, the resurrection is the Eucatastrophe. See, the way Paul viewed the world, the resurrection of Jesus ripped the veil between the present age of catastrophe and the future age of goodness and the justice of God coming in. He brings it into the present age. Right? And this is what we've been looking at as a church for the past few moments. Right? When Jesus shows up in Matthew chapter 4, do you remember what he says? He says, the kingdom of the heavens is here. You're not waiting for it. It's here. It's now. John Mark Comer, he says it this way. He says, for Paul, we live in a time of overlap between a world that is dying off and a world that is being born. In Paul's mind, there's a world right now that's dying off. And there's a new, beautiful, different world that's being born and coming to pass. And so we don't have this idea of living in this, stuck in this present age and just kind of twiddling our thumbs, waiting for the age to come, just kind of biding our time, trying to be good people. Paul says there's a third reality. And it's marked by a few things. The first is this: life is full of suffering, frustration, and groaning. Aren't you glad you came this morning? I don't think I have to go too deep into this. I think we all feel this, right? Suffering, groaning. Look at what he says in verse 18. He says, I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory about to be revealed in us. Verse 20, for the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it. Verse 22, we know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not only the creation, but we, all of us in this room, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, we groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. You know, when we walk through suffering, it brings questions like, when will the suffering be over? When will the wars end? When will anxiety and depression cease? When will the racial divide heal? And when will paradise finally arrive? What Paul says is this: what you're experiencing now is like a woman in labor. Now, y'all, I've never had a baby, but my wife has had 4. And the first pregnancy we had, let's just say we thought we were going to lose her and our child. It was hard. It was rough. But you know what happened? It passed. Now they're both beautifully healthy. We've had more children. Why? Because the pain of labor is temporary. And it gives way to something even more glorious, even more beautiful. And Paul says, hey, that is where we are right now. Maybe this morning you're here and you've got this dull ache. You're groaning. You're groaning. Or maybe your pain is a little bit more acute, right? A loss of a child or some situation happening in your family. Maybe it's your marriage that's causing a great deal of pain in you. Maybe there's a death of a friend or a loved one or a family member. And you're groaning. You're just groaning. And despite the advances in technology, despite the amazing amount of apps, self-help books, and medication we have, the reality is the one thing the West has not provided a solution for is suffering. One pastor said, welcome to the human condition. And here's why, the second thing. It's because the main problem in the world is us. And the political issues, the racial issues, the educational issues, listen, they are all serious issues. They are all problems, but they are actually symptoms. We work with an organization called Project Connect Nashville, which is seeking to alleviate poverty in Nashville. And the way they do it isn't by throwing money at the problem. The way they do it is by identifying the fact that there are broken relationships. Broken relationships with stuff, broken relationships with people, broken relationships with the trauma in our past, broken relationships with God. And so the solution isn't let's throw more money at it, right? Let's maybe just talk about it. It's no, let's deal with it. Because the root issue, as Paul says later on, is our hearts. It's our flesh. And if we think that the problem is only out there, then all we'll do is spend our time trying to fix broken systems, all the while being broken people. And I love the heart behind it. I think we should engage in these things. Right? We should try to see what we can do to fix these problems. But it overlooks the deeper problem. Jordan B. Peterson, who's a psychologist, he says it this way. He says, if society is corrupt, and not only the individuals within it, then where did the corruption originate? And how is it propagated? And the sad thing is we're not the only ones who feel it. You see what Paul said in verse 20? He said creation was subjected to this. Creation, like the animal kingdom, the oceans, the atmosphere, the cosmos is groaning under the weight of corrupt human beings. So many of us want to save the world, but first we have to be saved. And Paul's like, that's where we start. The healing of the world begins with the healing of the human condition. We need to be saved by something or someone outside of ourselves. and it's Jesus of Nazareth. Which brings good news. The main hope for the world and the main hope for the human condition is resurrection. Look at verse 23. And not only creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. That phrase, redemption of our bodies, is kind of insider language for resurrection, right? And Paul here is not talking about Jesus' resurrection. He's talking about ours. See, a lot of times we think of the future as sort of this two-step process. We've got life now, and then life after death. I love what N.T. Wright says. He says, well, there's a third one. There's life after death, and then life after death. You see, what Paul's getting at is this. What happened to Jesus? When he rose from the grave, will one day happen to all of Jesus' followers. Like him, we're going to die, but then we're going to be raised from the dead by the power of the creator of all creation. And the God who spoke all things into existence will call our names and will rise up. And Jesus' resurrection is kind of like a first fruits. Kind of like a, hey, watch this. Watch what's going to happen to you. It's kind of like spring. I was talking to somebody recently who said, Nashville has about 48 seasons. Right? And if you've been here longer than 2 days, you've probably experienced 4 of them already. Right? I mean, this past week, it was like 80 degrees on Wednesday. Last Saturday, they were calling for snow. I don't understand, okay? Maybe you can help explain it. I don't understand this. But like we go through these seasons and we're like, wow, it's summer. Nope, it's not summer. Okay, it's spring. Okay, close. No, it's just rain. It's just rain, and then there's some sun. And that's kind of like what Paul's getting at. When we look at the seasons, we go, oh, summer's here. Oh, but it's not here yet. And the resurrection of Christ is that 80-degree day in the middle of winter, and you go, oh, hey, it's coming. Here's how I know. Look at this. It's coming. See, for Paul, the future was already here. And it was coming when the Holy Spirit was poured out on all of Jesus' followers. The Holy Spirit, I don't know if you grew up in a church like I did where we don't really know what the Holy Spirit is. We kind of talk about him, but we're a little scared of him. Right? But let me just kind of sum it up for you. The Holy Spirit is the person of God who is present in the lives of his followers and apprentices, who brings with him God's power and God's presence and God's authority in our lives. And what Paul says is, hey, the new season, this thing you've been waiting for, like just, I hope I make it till I die. No, it's here. It's right now. Summer has started. It's been inaugurated. It's been set into motion. And Paul would say that was the turning point in history. But think about it like this. Jesus lived among the outcasts. He had compassion for those who had been truly marginalized. Right? His teachings on the kingdom and what it means to truly love God and truly love your neighbor, especially your enemies. The miracles he performed, right? The healings and the exorcisms. The arrest by the Roman government on behalf of the Jewish religious class. The crucifixion on a cross, the burial in a borrowed tomb, the resurrection 3 days later, the ascension into heaven, and the pouring out of his Spirit on all of his followers. All of this set into motion the death of one world and the birth of another. And we wait for Jesus to come back and finish what he started. That's what we do. As his apprentices, we put the full weight of our lives on this truth. We orient our lives around the return of Jesus to make all things new. And in the meantime, we actively engage in the way of Jesus, practicing it until, as Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, God's kingdom comes and God's will is done in Nashville as it's done in heaven. Now, for us as a church, we believe that this following Jesus isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's not something to do so we can just have more information on Jesus and cool facts so we can win on like trivia night down at Edley's, right? Like that's not what we do. We embody this through a practice. And when you look through the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of the New Testament, there is one embodied practice that most closely resembles resurrection. And we call it baptism. It's baptism. I know we all have a lot of baggage when it comes to baptism. Can I just say, it's okay, right? Some of us grew up in a tradition where we were sprinkled or christened as a little kid, and that's like the last we thought of it. Some of us have been baptized more times than we care to admit. Right? I was talking with Micah this week. I'm going to call you out, man. I was talking with Micah this week. He's like, well, I was baptized in the Jordan River, so I got the trump card. I was like, well, yeah, you kind of do. Right? We all have different stories with baptism or not baptism. But as followers of Jesus, listen, here's the point. Baptism is the way that we take the micro story of our lives and we embody the macro story of the healing of humanity. See, Jesus' desire for you is not a better version of you. It's not 2.0 whoever you are. Jesus' desire is for the entirety of your life to be set free from groaning. So the ritual of baptism is a symbol. It's more than that, really, but it's a symbol that represents the death and the burial and the resurrection of Christ. Think about it like this. Death, you go under the water as a symbolic way of dying to your old self in this old world. And then in the burial, you wait. Not for long, we'll pull you out. Okay, but you wait, right? And you wait underneath the love of God, and then you're brought out, you're resurrected, if you will, out of the water. You come back to a new way of life based on the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, to a new community of brothers and sisters, and a new spirit in the marrow of your bones, which match this whole new world. In baptism, we identify with Jesus' death and his burial and his resurrection, and we put our hope and that we say yes to that narrative arc for our own story. What's interesting is throughout the Bible, many times water is a symbol of the Holy Spirit. And so when you think about being baptized, you're immersed. We don't sprinkle, we dunk here, okay? All the way in and under the person of the Holy Spirit. And he becomes, when we come out, the new air that we breathe, the new life we step into. Jesus called this the life that is real life. For Jesus, it's not about it's not about quantity. It's about quality. It's not about what happens to you after you die. It's about what happens to you right now as he's laid a hold of the future and pulled it into the present and says, this can be your reality. There is life for you here. There's life for you now with Jesus of Nazareth. And he says, all of you are invited. So we do this practice, and actually next week we're going to do it here, in this space right here. And there's nothing special about the water in here. It's good old, Nashville tap water, okay? I assure you, it is not special. But what it represents is something more incredible. You may be here, and you're like, you know what? I've never done that, or at least I've never come out awakened to a new reality that is the kingdom of God. I need to step into that. I know I've already had conversations with some of you who are wanting to walk in light of this new reality and obedience to the way of Jesus, both adults and kids. But I know there are some of you who have hesitations. I get that. For example, what would people think of me if as an adult I said that I've been a follower of Jesus and now I'm getting baptized? Listen, I was baptized twice. Once when I was 8, and then I did my own thing for a long time. Walked away, had a lot of questions. I was a pastor's kid, if that tells you anything. And then, right around when I was 21 or 22, I was like, holy cow, I've gotten this wrong. So for me, I got baptized as an adult. Not because it saved me, but because of what it represented. New life in a new way of seeing the kingdom. Some of you were baptized as an infant, and that's awesome. Listen, we celebrate that. That's beautiful. Like that was a statement of hope by your family that one day you would also follow Jesus. So getting baptized as an adult is not an insult to your family. It is actually a fulfillment of the hope they had that one day it would become real for you. Listen, this isn't legalism. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to walk in obedience to kingdom realities. Let the old systems of public opinion, the old you, die. As Jesus said, repent and be baptized. Why? Because the kingdom of heaven is here. And he's inviting you to step into a new reality and to see the world changed when you step into that kingdom reality.